Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Jay Holder. I'm the Executive Director of Running USA, and thanks for taking some time to attend our April webinar. I had to think about what month it was there for a second because this year has flown by, but it is April, and April is Global Volunteer. Is it Global Volunteer or Global Volunteer Appreciation Month?
Global Volunteer Month.
Global Volunteer Month. And one of the things we always hear at Running USA, one of the topics people always ask us about is how do I recruit, how do I retain, and how do I train volunteers? And so we have put together the leading experts on this topic in the running industry. And we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so learning from their successes and what they've learned from their different organizations. They come from different organizations across the country, putting on races of different sizes. And then in the end, we'll have some time for questions. So leading our panel today is Running USA board member and head of volunteer operations for New York Roadrunners, Donna Finney. Donna, take it away.
Yep. Thank you, Jay and team. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy Global Volunteer Month, which I hope I'm not biased, I think is the best month. Global Volunteer Month is actually a global movement to highlight volunteering and the incredible stories behind the people that make so many organizations run worldwide. So there's lots of movement happening around this. And I'm really excited. I've got some amazing people joining me today to kind of like navigate some conversations as it relates to one of the biggest challenges across the running industry, recruitment, right? So joining me today, I've got Samantha Furlong, who is the Volunteer Program Manager at Chicago Event Management. Samantha started working at CEM in 2019 as a volunteer program assistant shortly after graduating college and has been growing within the organization ever since. In her current role, Samantha oversees volunteer operations for the Bank of America endurance events, including the Bank of America Chicago Marathon. Joining us again from Chicago, we've got Molly Babcock joining us as the volunteer program coordinator and has been in her role for 2 years now. Within her role, she focuses primarily on recruitment and organizing volunteer groups for the Bank of America endurance events. Also joining us today, we've got Melissa Cade, who is a senior project manager, charity coordinator, and course director at P3R. With a passion for bringing people together through events that make a difference, she wears a number of hats, but they all share one goal, and that is creating a meaningful impact, whether it's managing complex projects, coordinating charitable initiatives, or mapping out the perfect race course. You can count on Melissa. And last but not least, we've got our lovely Kristen Lyde, who is the Senior Manager of Community Engagement and Volunteers at Atlanta Track Club. She has been with the Track Club since 2021 and comes with over 10 years of volunteer management experience. She leads a team in managing volunteers, entertainment, community engagement for the world's largest 10K, which I think I just saw volunteer registration just opened up. So good luck to you, Kristen. So that's our amazing panel that we've got today. So I'd love for them to kind of open up to you and share a little bit about your program size, your largest event that you do. And one of our traditions here at New York Roadrunners is to share a fun fact about yourself. So why don't we start off with you, Samantha?
Sure. Thank you, Donna. As Donna mentioned, I am the volunteer program manager at Chicago Event Management, and I am responsible for recruiting and managing volunteers for the Bank of America Chicago Marathon, which is 10,000 volunteers, the Bank of America Shamrock Shuffle, which has 3,000 volunteers, and the Bank of America Chicago 13.1 coming up here soon, which has 1,000 volunteers. I like to explain the responsibilities of the volunteer program manager role as taking the volunteers through their entire journey. Meaning everything from point of setting up registration, communicating with the volunteers leading up to event day, and creating check-in and deployment plans when they arrive on site. And my fun fact is that I am not a runner.
That is a fun fact. Why don't we take it over to Molly?
Thanks, Donna. Hi, everyone. I am Molly Babbitt, and I'm the Volunteer Program Coordinator at Chicago Event Management. As previously mentioned, I've been in this role for 2 years, and my main responsibility is recruiting, organizing, and preparing our volunteer groups across all our events. Typically, each year, about 80% of our volunteers do join us from a volunteer group. So at the Bank of America Chicago Marathon, we have over 200 volunteer groups. At the Bank of America Shamrock Shuffle, we see over 50 volunteer groups. And the Bank of America Chicago 13.1, we will see over 25 volunteer groups joining us. My fun fact is that while I was born and raised here in Chicago, I did live in Canada for 8 years.
Oh, wow. Did not know that about you. How about we pass it over to Melissa?
Thank you, Donna. So here at the Dick's Sporting Good Pittsburgh Marathon, and more specifically P3R, even though it's not in my title, I have been managing our volunteer program for the entire duration that we have been in existence. So 17 years, and even prior to that when it was the city's marathon. So I began the volunteer program in 1997. It's been a labor of love. It is just myself. I've had a couple individuals help me through the years, but I've found that it's easier to connect with people, easier to connect with volunteers when it's kind of a solo mission. It gives them a face, a name, and they feel welcome. So we do welcome a lot of volunteers through the year. Our biggest being the marathon, where we ask for 4,000, and we have about 45,000 runners in that event. And then we have a dozen events throughout the year. I won't list them all individually, but they range anywhere from about 2,000 to about 20,000 participants. So it just depends on what we're asking from a volunteer, depends largely on how many runners there are. So we'll usually ask for about 10% of our participant database to be helped by our volunteers. So that's why this year we'll be asking for 4,000 next weekend. Oh, my fun fact. Is it really that fun after I heard theirs? I'm not sure. I'm a dog mom to 3, so it allows me to be an event planner. They are my whole life.
I think that's an incredible fun fact. And I know you're in crunch time now, so thank you for sparing some time with us today, Melissa. How about we hear from Kristen?
Yeah, Melissa, that is a fun fact. So I too am a dog mother. So I'm here with you. So as Donna said, my name is Kristen Lyde. I've been with the Atlanta Track Club company for about since 2021. October 4th, I remember the day. It was around our PNC 10 miler. It's an exciting time, and we have races that span from about 2,000 participants all the way to about 60,000 participants with our Atlanta Peachtree Road Race. So lots of volunteers it takes to make our events a success. We usually range from about 2,000 volunteers to about 5,000 volunteers for all of the events that we have throughout the year. I am so jealous of Chicago about having 4 events. We have about 40 throughout the year, so there's always something to do as far as volunteers are concerned. So this month has been really great to be able to acknowledge them and kind of shed a light on how important they are to all of our organizations. Fun fact, I was a ballerina from ages 10 to 21. And no, I don't anymore.
Wow, I learned so much about you all. Okay, and so for us at Road Runners, our largest event is the New York City Marathon, and if you're following along in the running industry, there's been this kind of tag war of who's got the largest marathon. We're hopefully to go get back that claim back this year. We do also have 50 plus events, so we like to keep ourselves pretty busy too, Kristen. But a lot of people don't realize that we also have a lot of community programming. So we have an open run program that is run by volunteers, and that happens 52 weeks a year, rain or shine, and it's completely run by volunteers. So we've got volunteer programming that has maybe 5 volunteers on site to our largest event, which would be 10,000 throughout the year. So as you can see in the audience, I want you to see that we've got plenty of people here in the room with different size events. So hopefully you can see your event in these discussion points. So why don't we get this party started off? I am curious to hear what channels have been the most effective for recruitment of volunteers for your events? And why don't I kick that over to Melissa?
Thank you. So obviously we have to reach out to a lot of the corporations that we have in town, reach out to a lot of the colleges, high schools, work with our athletic directors. But while we're doing that outreach and really trying to weave in, especially the younger generation, the younger athletes into it, just to kind of get them engaged in running overall, we are finding that some of our most successful programs stem from our senior centers. You think seniors and everyone thinks really old, but we have a lot of like groups that are onward seniors is what it's called. And it's 55 and up, individuals that are just looking for a way to spend their time pre-retirement. And then obviously it's my retirees that seem to really bring a lot of time, a lot of passion, and it's incredible. Another place that we have had a lot of success with our recruitment is we work with some second chance programs. Individuals that are basically in some type of housing right now while they're kind of waiting to get back on their feet, in need of volunteer hours, extremely reliable, hard workers, and it's been a really successful recruitment tool.
So, okay, we're going to move on. How about tailoring recruitment for your larger events versus smaller ones? I know, Kristen, you're keeping yourself pretty busy and you've got events of all sizes. How could you share some information for our audience today?
Yeah, we take, I think similarly to Melissa, we take the time out to really invest into the community. In regards to like our school systems that are around here, we have Georgia Tech, Georgia State, University of Georgia, schools all over. So we take a lot of time because they're already invested into, say, track and field, or they're invested into road races, long runs, things like that. And so it's our way to kind of pull them into something that they already have a passion about, get them to volunteer if they're not participating in the races themselves. And we also have something called the Community Support Program, where nonprofits have the opportunity through government grants to be able to volunteer. And a certain amount of volunteers we can help contribute to their own costs of things like shoes or, going towards track and field, anything like that. So we really do our best to connect to see who those people are and identifying them, and then going after, who that one lead is to be able to bring in their teams, their groups.
Melissa, you had shared something with me the other day that was like really interesting on your approach on this.
So are you talking about for how we recruit those larger groups? We actually we do some, I think I had told you, we do some old school methods. We still go out and kind of pepper the town with flyers. That works for some of our larger events. Smaller events, we do a lot by way of word of mouth. So we have a lot of volunteers that just really keep that momentum going by talking about their experiences. And lucky for us, we have a nice pool of individuals that we can kind of go to first for those smaller events. But when it comes to the larger events, their word of mouth really helps us get some new individuals engaged. In order to recruit, we really like to try and like target some new groups each year. So like, what are 50 organizations? I always set 50 specifically for the marathon, 50 organizations that we have not either worked with in a few years, maybe we lost a contact, or maybe they're new to the area, and how can we get them involved? Not always successful, but definitely something that we try and do is make those new connections year after year. And that seems to be really helpful for the larger events.
That's great. I mean, for us here at Roadrunners, our approach can also be very grassroots, right? So we will go through the course location on Google Maps and pretty much be obnoxious to the point of annoying, and reach out to every high school, book club, civic association that's within like a mile radius of a certain fluid station. We really feel like that targeted approach that's making it more too close to the block that a particular fluid station is the most organic way for when it comes to successful recruitment. And then as it relates to us for Open Run, again, it's very targeted and it's more slow and methodical because we want that organic recruitment to be successful and really putting the right people in those parks to support. So again, people that are already using those parks in particular. So flyers in libraries. Again, bouncing back to our larger events, we are lucky here at Roadrunners that we've got a marketing team that can send out targeted marketing campaigns via zip codes. And that's been something that's been really successful for us to kind of like bounce in between the two different sizes of events that we do have. And I guess this all kind of relates, and I love that, Melissa, that you're in tune with recruiting new groups, right? Because I think sometimes we can be guilty of going back to the same old faces, which is great, but we want to be recruiting new faces. But I'm curious to see how are you ensuring your recruitment efforts reflect diversity of your city and community? I know, Samantha, you've been doing incredible work on that front.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. Molly has spent a considerable amount of time on a project over the last couple of years, so I think I'll kick it over to her to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Samantha. Yes, we have been doing a yearly ongoing volunteer persona project to help us better understand who our volunteers are, where they're coming from, and what similarities our volunteers have between the makeup of Chicago. So the first year that we did this project, we downloaded all of the data on our volunteers that they submit at the point of registration, and we analyzed it. We looked at all of the data points, things like gender identity, age, generation, and location, specifically looking at their zip code. We were able to get a lot of really good data out of this, but we realized that there was some more data that we wanted to collect. So we added some additional questions to our registration form. We made them optional so that people only had to submit this information if they pleased. So we started asking questions about ethnicity, about foreign language, things of that nature. We also made sure that our gender identity question was inclusive in terms of the language that it's used. So by adding these additional questions, it helped us even better understand our volunteers, where they come from, what they may look like, and so forth. So when pulling this data, we looked at our volunteers overall, so any volunteer who joined us throughout the calendar year, but then we also broke it out by event so that we could see even more specifically who the volunteers are that join us at our events, just knowing that we have some unique events within our wheelhouse. Samantha, I know you have a lot of insight as to how we use this data. Would you like to share anything on that?
Yeah, thank you, Molly, for taking the time to explain that. What's been so incredible about this project that she's been spending so much time on is it's really helped us understand who is currently volunteering with us and, just importantly, who isn't. It's allowed us to set very targeted goals, which then informs more intentional recruitment strategies. So, for example, when we're going through this data after Molly takes the time to download everything, if we see that a particular neighborhood is underrepresented in our volunteer base, we can set a specific goal to grow engagement in that area. And then from there, we can work with our marketing team to develop a targeted outreach, whether that's putting up flyers in those local businesses, connecting with those community organizations, or just adjusting our messages to better resonate with that audience. But it's been a big shift for us compared to just setting a wide net and hoping that something sticks. It's been very meaningful to have some of these data-driven recruitment efforts that reflect on the diversity of our city.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing fantastic work there. Kristen, I know you've been delving into this and working hard on this as well.
Yeah, my team, they're absolute rock stars. I know they weren't able to make it on today, but we have a lot of initiatives very similarly to Chicago. We do collect a lot of data about the backgrounds of every volunteer that comes in, and just kind of analyzing on where we need to delve into to make sure that every part of our community is represented. And so Atlanta is a really diverse city. For those who haven't visited, come on down. But we're a really diverse city. And so we take the time to not just do cold calling, which cold calling is great. It does work, but also to actually just go in and really invest into the community and get to know our community more. So there's been lots of discovery of areas where maybe it wasn't identified initially of people from diverse backgrounds on what their needs are, and seeing if we can match that, and then them also coming to us and saying, you know, we want to be a part of this running, health, fitness community as well. So I think it's just a matter of us really taking a moment. There are days where I will have my calendar blocked off to go to, you know, the south side of Atlanta. I'm not from the south side of Atlanta, but but I'll go down there just to connect with the community that's there. So and my team, and I think honestly, I will brag on the Atlanta Track Club staff, because I think they're all really amazing with just trying to identify the groups that may not be included or may not know that they can be included into the running community, and going out into the community itself. But we really push hard on that. And I am head of the DEI committee here at the track club. And so we also create a lot of different initiatives, not just for volunteers, but it does include volunteers. Like one is called the Buddy to Buddy program. So if somebody's not a runner, or they're a walker like Samantha and I, you know, we're not really out here doing it with so much, then they can have people to gain community, or volunteers can have time to be matched up together to do certain things, like be on the course, or, you know, get to meet new people at the finish line, those kinds of things. So just giving the opportunity for each community and each person to come and connect.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you make a point to go to them. You've got to meet people where they're at, right? To make it really truly organic and reflective of what's happening in your city and your community. One thing that we're doing here as well at Roadrunners is kind of looking at our accessibility and how that relates to our volunteers. There's so much movement happening with that for our athletes, but that also is our volunteers, and we've got to understand what our volunteers are needing as it relates to that. So part of our communications that we send out is understanding if they have any accessibility needs and making any reasonable accommodations, and understanding and researching that. But then also it starts off with a simple ask, right? You've got to invite people to the table to be part of these amazing events. And that's something, again, when I talk about, we go through Google and we look at every school, and one of the schools along our course was the School of Blind. Sure did reach out to them, and we had them out there on the course this past year. So it's like really important just to even just start off with welcoming people to our events. And there's so much important work that we have to continue to do that. And I appreciate you all for your solid efforts there. Why don't we bounce over to talking about word of mouth? I think that's like one of the oldest recruitment tools of bringing back our returning volunteers and how that plays in our recruitment. Molly, you were sharing some cool stuff that you were doing over there in Chicago as it relates to word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. So word of mouth helps us reach networks, areas, communities, markets that we might not already be in touch with. So we actually ask volunteers in our post-event surveys, how likely are they to recommend volunteering at our events and referring a friend to volunteer? And the majority of our volunteers tell us that they're extremely likely to, and that's super important to us. We also ask volunteers in the survey how they found out about their volunteer opportunity, and they can indicate that they found out through a friend, family, however they found out, they can indicate that. And that's super helpful for us, because then we can best prepare our current volunteers to go and spread the message of volunteering at our events. One thing we always say here in Chicago is that's one thing for us as the volunteer team to tell someone about why they should volunteer at our events, how great of a time they'll have, how much of a fun experience it is. But that message is often better received if it's coming from somebody that they trust, somebody that they know, and somebody who has been a volunteer at our events. One other thing that we do is we do reach out to our runners, our participants, having them let their family and friends know that a way that they can support them on race day is through volunteering. And with that, we also email our already registered volunteers, letting them know that it's more fun to volunteer with a friend and that there's still time for a friend to register and join them on race day.
Great. What about you, Melissa?
I agree with everything that Molly just said, and there are definitely things that we try and do in order to get that word of mouth and get those friends to come out. And like she said, people trust those that they know. You have to get to know them. So I think when you and I had spoke previously, I told you that it's a big course to tackle on a race weekend. But what I try to do specifically is Expo houses so many volunteers in one space. So I try and get over there, get to know them. Once they know you and they put a face with the name and they feel like they can talk to you, they develop a relationship with you, whether it's, hey, I can't make your next event, my daughter's getting married. I think I let you know that I take notes. Like, just remember, Kathy's daughter's getting married. So that when I send an email and say, hey, we have another event coming up, we would love it if you could come out and join us. Kathy's more likely to join me whenever I say, by the way, how was your daughter's wedding? Now Kathy comes with a friend and it just kind of expands from there. And obviously these are the generations that have been around for a while, and they're also bringing children into it that are now becoming, these adult volunteers. And so as different individuals phase out of it, it kind of creates that new generation of volunteers.
Yeah, I love that. I love the sentimental value of slowing down and getting to know our volunteers, because it brings so much value to their experience, and they feel seen, right? And that's really important as it relates to the retention of our volunteers. Kristen, I'm curious on your take on word of mouth. How does that function for you with your recruitment?
Yeah, and just to mention, Melissa, after you said that about just taking a notebook, I was like, I'm following Melissa on this. And I actually ended up telling my with the volunteer coordinator about it, because I was like, we have thousands of people that we meet every day, and you want their experience to feel like a special experience to them. And so just to kind of reiterate what you all said in regards to just making sure that the volunteer feels like they are seen, that they are heard. But also on top of that, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier about like preparation and making sure that they feel informed so that you can do additional things on top of it, like having a more interactive experience for volunteers when they get there. So they're, that word of mouth, they'll say, I remember when I was able to hold a sign out on the course. I remember when I was able to have bells and whistles and, yell and enjoy what it was to be out there and to support the running community. And so through word of mouth, we just want to make sure that the experience is so enjoyable, but they have no choice but to say, this was amazing. I want to come back next year and I'm going to bring my whole family. And I'm like, great. 10 people at a hydration station. I love it. Let's go. So word of mouth is really important in that way, and just making sure they enjoy the experience themselves, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've been training up like our volunteer leaders are volunteers, but they can kind of take on that more of a central role of managing key areas, and the volunteers themselves. We've been kind of training them to take photos of the volunteers in action, and we've got like a little Flickr family album, I like to think of it, and that goes out in all of our thank yous. And we have a hashtag. So we want the volunteers to put it out there, right? Like if they had a great time, put that out there on your social media, and we're seeing a good return rate for us as it relates to that, because when you've got so many people passing through on race day, we can't be the only ones that are out there engaging with them. It's the key people, and so making sure that they've got those tools to spread that love as well. Yeah. Why don't we switch gears here? Why don't we talk a little bit about technology? I'm curious, have any of you tried anything new or unconventional in your recruiting efforts recently? I'm just going to throw that out to all of you. Who wants to share anything that excites them?
I can start things off. I have two new things that I'm very excited to talk about that we've recently introduced to our volunteer program. The first thing being our volunteer rewards program. So we launched this in 2023, and how it works is that all volunteers can receive points each time that they check in at a volunteer shift, and then they can accumulate points and redeem for an item of their choice. So they get about 25 points for each hour that they volunteer. And some of the items that they can redeem for include some journal sets, tumblers, mugs, belt bags, Nike running shoes, and then our grand prize is a complimentary entry to the Chicago Marathon. The program is designed to recognize and motivate our repeat volunteers. And what's been effective is how it's structured. So our volunteers do have to put in multiple shifts or roles to be able to earn that reward. So it is very exciting and motivating, but the redemptions are fairly low, and that's by design. So that means that a small inventory of items can go a long way for a program like this. And it's been a very thoughtful way that we can show appreciation without needing a big budget, and it still encourages people to stay involved and keep coming back. The other thing I also wanted to mention that we just started even more recently is a new backpack incentive for our group leaders. I won't steal from Molly because I know she's going to talk a little bit more about our volunteer groups later on. But what she'll share is how critical our volunteer groups are to us. And it's so true that we rely on our volunteer groups, and they are absolutely wonderful. But we found is that sometimes they can bail on numbers at the last hour, which I'm sure everyone can relate to. And it's often after our registration deadline comes when it's too late to find another group to fill those spots that the group was committing to fill. So we added a new incentive that group leaders who check in 80% or more of the volunteers that they committed to at the time of applying will receive a backpack post-event. This helps with just adding some accountability and ensuring that the groups aren't making empty promises, because at the end of the day, we would love for groups to bring, 100 or so volunteers, but we would rather them just tell us up front if it's more realistic that they'd be closer to a smaller group size of 20 or so that we have time to recruit for those remaining spots. And this incentive has helped us with receiving some of more of those realistic numbers up front. And it's also been a great way for us to recognize that group leader for taking on the responsibility of following up with their group members and all the communication that comes along with that.
Love it. I love the swag one as well. I know volunteers love they love their gear. Molly, I'm curious to hear what you've been working on.
Yeah, lots with volunteer groups. So Samantha mentioned that our volunteer groups are critical. So we did introduce the Backpack Initiative, ways to just recognize those volunteer group leaders. We also offer a post-event donation to our volunteer groups as a way to say thank you for donating their time. That also is a way to get them to bring more volunteers while still staying honest to what they can bring. They're very motivated by both the backpack and the donation.
And Chris and Melissa, any insight on new technology that been helping you on recruiting?
I think you're gonna mention it, so I won't go delve too deep. But yeah, with technology, there's we're expanding on what it looks like year by year. It feels like second by second at this point. But I do use a lot of technology that you'll delve into as far as ChatGPT and those things are concerned. But we also do, similarly to Chicago, actually Chicago, I know I told you I stole this from you, but we actually ended up making our own rewards program because I loved the idea of tiers and being able to just thank the folks that keep returning to help us with all the events we have through the year. So we have our own system in kind of a more unconventional way of recruiting back for that. But we also tap into our school systems here beyond just the college systems that I was telling you about. We have relationships with Atlanta Public Schools, so a lot of high school students, Girls and Boys Club here, the abundance of other types of organizations, Hands on Atlanta, which is a third party that is specifically for volunteer opportunities. And so we partner with them so that people who may not just be looking straight at a running organization's website to volunteer can still see it on a more mass level. So we utilize as many relationships as possible, even when we have sponsors, if you have a sponsor for your event.
That's great. I only just recently joined this train, and I don't know why it took me so long, but do any of you use ChatGPT or AI?
I have a nickname for her, and she's very useful, yes.
What's her nickname?
I call her Chatoria.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. It is very useful, especially when it comes to, I think we mentioned earlier about marketing and how to specifically word something to really grab people's attention. Sometimes what sounds good to you doesn't sound good to the mass audience. So Tutoria does a great job at, at creating those messages. And then I pass it off to our marketing team, and they can kind of help cultivate even more language around how to grab people's attention. And then also on the back end of things, we do use it for our reward system to kind of sift through some information if our system doesn't do it, or Excel sheets, things like that.
Love that. Anybody else have some cool insights on ChatGPT, how they use that for recruitment?
Yeah,
I
much
use
like, oh, I'm sorry.
almost.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Thanks. Sorry. I was just going to mention I use it a lot, honestly, just for sending out mass recruitment emails as we receive new contacts. It can be challenging, honestly, to ask people to volunteer their time, especially when you don't know them yet. And there's a lot of information when someone hasn't volunteered before that you want to make sure that you relate to them as a first-time volunteer so they feel well prepared. So it's helpful to just kind of send a list of everything you want to get across in your email, and it'll spit something back out at you. So really helpful and saves a lot of time, especially if you're someone like me that spends a lot of your day emailing.
I can agree with what Samantha said. After you do this for a while, you feel like your messages all sound the same. And so, I mean, they're coming from the same person. You're asking the same ask. And so you feel like, how can I make it a little fresh, a little something new? And I think ChatGPT has definitely been the answer for that. So I can take my thought as I would type it, and then they make it pretty and they make it exciting and add colorful little emojis I might not have thought to throw in there. And it's a fun way to keep them engaged. And I think, when I'm dealing with the demographic of volunteers that have been returning time and time again, they know my message. They're not worried about that. But to attract those younger individuals, I think Chat GPT is definitely the way to go, or any AI.
Yeah. And I relate to the email woes, right? I mean, we're all on that struggle bus sometimes. I mean, some things I really have to spend an all evening asking ChatGPT all kinds of stuff. It's fascinating to me, but I've helped it create taglines for me when my creative juices aren't flowing so much. I've even asked it what are medical groups I could recruit for the Brooklyn Half, which we've got coming up, right? And it really will help deliver some of that information. It doesn't take away from the work that we still have to do, but it does help direct you in the right direction. It's been my best friend. I am curious though to hear technology. And Melissa, you do a great thing about tracking recruitment and engagement for your volunteers. You have a great milestone for your volunteers.
Thank you. Yes. So we, much like many others, we use Volunteer Local to really track our volunteers. That's our database. And we've been very lucky over time. They've kind of changed some of the terms on their end to where they're really doing the tracking for me. So I'm able to see which events, if I open a volunteer record, it'll show me across all my databases, like all of my events. Have they done our marathon? Have they done our EQT 10 miler? So it kind of gives me a snapshot for each volunteer in one spot as to what they've done. And we use that that's our incentive tool, is really rewarding those who have been with us a long time. So I have a number of volunteers that have been in this with me for all 17 years I've been here. And they're incredible, but there are others that have been with me for 5 years, 10 years. So started to think about how to really make it worth their while, like to show them I want to say thank you. And so with that, we use that tracking in our technology to help us, it kind of blips on my radar whenever I know I have a group of volunteers that are hitting that like 10-year milestone. We used to give out a token of appreciation in the sense of a pin, but now we actually framed it to where they each get, if you're hitting your 10-year anniversary, you get a replica of the medal that we give our participants that year in a keychain format, so that we can actually say thank you to the volunteer in the same fashion that we do the participant, just a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that. And everyone loves the medals. I love that
Yes.
take on
I
that.
have an example if you
Oh yeah, show
Okay,
us. I'd
so
love to see that.
yes, we have, this was anyone in 2002, I guess, that got it. These just happen to be the two in my desk. So, and then there was one from 2024. So they kind of get that matching medal as a thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I'm sure they love that so much. It's already got my head spinning of rethinking a few things on our end. And we do love a good show and tell. Thank you, Melissa. All right, so we've done all our work. We've recruited our volunteers. I'm curious, are you turning first-time volunteers into repeat volunteers? Why don't we hear from Molly as it relates to what you've been doing for your groups in Chicago?
Yeah, absolutely. So here in Chicago, as previously mentioned, 80% of our volunteers at any given event join us from a volunteer group. A volunteer group could be a school group, a school team, corporate group, nonprofit group, a college sorority, fraternity, or even just a group of family and friends who want to volunteer together. Creating a relationship with the leader of that group is super important since the groups do make up the majority of our volunteers. For all of our group leaders, but especially our new group leaders, I am there with them throughout the entire process of registration and recruitment. So from the first moment that they indicate that they are interested in volunteering with us, throughout all of registration, all the way up until race day, I am there to help them answer any questions they may have. So throughout registration, I check in with group leaders, make sure they're doing well, make sure they're on track in terms of registering their group members, answering any questions they may have. So that means that I am sending them a lot of emails, texts, and phone calls. And learning the communication style of these group leaders is super important. So for a college group, I'm more likely to text as opposed to email, just because I know that that's how they like to communicate. I also know that that means I might get a response at an odd hour, and I just have to be willing to respond to them. Meeting the volunteer group leaders where they're at is super important in making sure that they have a good experience in being a group leader. And it really does go a long way. So I mentioned that with the group leaders, I'm with them all the way up until race day. So I get to be there on race morning, checking in the majority, not quite all, but the majority of our volunteer groups, and making that in-person connection is super important, especially for the new group leaders. They get to see that I'm not just somebody sitting behind a screen, sending them a million emails and calling and texting them all the time. I am also out there at 2 in the morning in the dark, in the cold, in a field full of mud. I'm also out there. So I'm not asking them to do anything that I wouldn't do. And I think that's really important in building that relationship. It's also important just to help guide them through the process. Volunteering at our events, if you are not a runner or you've not volunteered before, can be very overwhelming. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of moving parts. So just explaining the process and being a resource for them on race day is super important. So finally, I'll just say that these relationships should be mutual. I hope that they're mutual. Here in Chicago, we try our very best to make sure that they are mutual, to the point that I have group leaders who like text me on the holidays, like wishing me well. I've had group leaders bring me little gifts and thank you cards, which is by no means necessary, but it just shows that they value the relationship just as much as I do. So all that to say, creating the relationship with the group leaders, especially new group leaders, is super important in making sure that they have a good experience and in wanting to come back.
It sounds like you're doing great work there, Melissa and Molly. And Melissa, I have a feeling that you're doing just as much hard work with your individual volunteers.
Definitely. No, Molly said it great. I think it transcends whether it's an individual or a group, that really establishing that relationship is key. I know I mentioned earlier, just really trying to get to know as many volunteers as I can. It's what keeps them engaged. It's what keeps them coming back. If you want them to be a repeat volunteer, I think getting to know them, and kind of feel out the situation in terms of like, hey, it was great to see you at the marathon. We have a lot of events coming up. You'll have to let me know if you're interested in something else. Like, it's very difficult when you have multiple events to like get to know those individuals, but also know your boundaries. Where would I lose them if I over communicate? So I think not oversaturating my own market by blending my volunteer bases has been helpful. because I let them know like, "Ooh, I didn't tell you about that event, not because I didn't want you there, but I didn't want you to think I was asking too much." And then that kind of opens the door because they feel like, oh, I was, thinking about their time, which I was, but I also don't want to lose them just because like, oh, now we heard about this event and that event. Like, when does she stop asking? Over time, you become friends with those individuals. So they become the trainers. Like, you get to a point where, oh, Melissa, I know you're busy. You don't have to worry about it. I can show the rest of the volunteers what to do here. It they're, we're a community and we're all in this together. So I think forming that relationship individually can also play into those group roles, like Molly said. Like, that person might become a leader and then they're bringing a group. So I think it's so important just to have those personal connections so that you can kind of retain them and get them back as a repeat volunteer.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so important, right, to just be so in tune with the volunteer experience and making sure it's a great one, because you get one time with them, and if it's not a good one, then they're not coming back, and you've got to recruit that same person or that same group all over again. Something that we've been working hard at Roadrunners is building a strong volunteer leader core. We recruit these folks and we take the time to do meet and greets with them. So they come attend an information session, they understand the time commitment. But then we have a meet and greet for 30 minutes, and it's just virtual, but it's a time for us to slow down and get to know these folks that want to get involved. What are their motivations? What are their dogs' names? What's their cats' names? Are they running the marathon? Really understand them. And then from there, we're able to pull information about their strengths and weaknesses and kind of place training module based on where they see themselves on marathon day. And we feel like that the investment in these key people, because it can't just be the us of the world, right, that are turning those first-time volunteers into repeat. You have to have an army of people supporting. So whether it is your part-time staff or it's your volunteer, your leaders, or your repeat volunteers that keep coming back year after year, giving them the tools for success to help nurture those relationships. And from us, we've seen incredible success in terms of people keep coming back, and even our survey results, like people are having a better time, and it's because we've got these people positioned, and we've slowed down for these key people, right, to make sure that they're representing us and making sure volunteers are having a great time. With that, I am curious to hear, how are you thanking your volunteers? I'm going to bounce that over to Kristen. I haven't heard from you for a little minute.
So we have a variety of ways that we thank them. I mean, especially during, the volunteer global appreciation time. We have a breakfast going on that our staff does, kind of potluck for in-office volunteers right now. So today was one of those days for us, because we were celebrating Boston on Monday. Usually I work from home day. So, but we do things like breakfast. We acknowledge them through our social media. We acknowledge them through our web pages, our volunteer newsletters. Of course, having something like Volunteers of the Month, we send out information about our volunteers to our member newsletters. We acknowledge them in, our Wingfoot magazine as well. We just had an article come out yesterday, just acknowledging all the things that they've done and how much we want to thank them. And then I really push in every event. I just always remind our staff as well and our top key leaders to just thank them. Sometimes a thank you is enough. Donna, I know you have a really cool slogan. Can you say it for me? It's like
See a volunteer, thank a volunteer.
Yeah. You have a really cool slogan. And so just pushing that ideology around making sure it's a continuous thing. To thank them. So of course, we have tchotchke items everywhere, and we have sponsors, and we use certain amounts of our budget if it's allotted to us to give them things, because as you said earlier, they love a free item. But at the same time, some people don't want that form of acknowledgement, and just kind of understanding the audience in a broad and more in a smaller sense to see how they want to be thanked, and kind of just capitalizing on that.
What about you, Melissa? How are you thanking your volunteers?
Obviously we do the obligatory messaging that we send out to them after we do any event. Again, hopefully that's something that we use, not just thank them, but to talk to them, promote some additional events that we have coming. we do always provide them with something. What is that? It kind of varies from event to event. Is it a shirt? Is it a hat? You know, it just really depends on what the event is, what time of year it is. Is it a ball hat? Is it a beanie? Is it a something to make them stand out? We always make sure they get that gift. They also get the luxury of having their volunteer hours confirmed. Many of our students are like, we need the hours, Miss Melissa. And so I send them a letter or certificate, but I do not send that until after the fact so I can verify that they actually showed up and worked their shift. And then some of the other events we have, like the marathon itself, we have our cycling event, Rush to Crush Cancer. I always give those. Those are right at the height of the pirate season. I think I mentioned we don't really have a good baseball team right now, but it's good enough that I think people would do it for that. So we give everyone a thank you by giving them a voucher they can redeem to any home game that season.
No, love that. I know we're running out of time, so I do want to see if Chicago team wants to share how they thank their volunteers.
I would agree with what Kristen said. We of course offer swag and have our wonderful volunteer rewards program and things like that, but just taking the time, I know we're all super busy on event day and the week of, but just taking that time when you interact with a volunteer, whether it's on site, customer service call, things like that, to just thank them. I think that is just so appreciated by this audience and goes a long way. Of course, the swag and all those things are nice too. But I would echo what Kristen mentioned earlier and your wonderful saying, Donna.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's so simple and it doesn't cost a thing, right? Just to simply just say thank you, and again, empowering and educating and building that culture within your teams to make sure that it's not just us in the world that are saying thank you. So your CEO is up on at the stage announcements saying thank you, volunteers. So it's just super important that it's a cultural effort. See a volunteer, thank a volunteer. You can definitely steal that. I've already put it on a shirt, so you can't beat me to that. But that is the slogan, and I want it to be a global effort. And with that, I know we're really low on time, and I want to make sure that we do open it up to questions. I think Jay's going to jump in here, but thank you all so much. This was really wonderful to hear your insight and your expertise.
Yeah, I echo that. This was Michael and I texted each other about 20 minutes ago and said we could listen to this for 3 hours. I mean, this is you guys just had so much great information. And it was just really interesting to hear all the ways that you're attracting and retaining volunteers. We do have a couple of questions, and if you have a question, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. We have one question from Eric. He wants to know, do you meet your hydration station volunteers? If you have any point-to-point marathons, are you able to actually do that? Are you able to focus, or are you able to just focus on relationships on race day at all and don't have too much time to give training? So I guess asking more about the people who are just race day volunteers, do you have an opportunity to meet with them?
I can speak to that a little bit. No, I don't have as much time to meet people out on the course, but I think that's why it's so important to have your key leaders to help them and help shape what the experience should look like for them. So that even though they may not hear me, a lot of people or see me, a lot of people eventually do meet me if they had a great experience and at volunteer check-in, because I usually am at volunteer check-in to ensure everything's going well there. But generally, I'll meet these people at some point throughout their time with the track club, and they're able to say, "Oh, you're Kristen," and I'll be like, "Yes," and they tell me their name, and I can actually remember it for some strange savant reason, and then we're able to connect via that way. But generally on race day, no. But the preparation really does help, and also we started to create videos where myself and staff can still see who we are to feel connected in that way. And so if you have the opportunity or the resource to do it, I would say that's one great way to make them feel connected to you, if that's a priority for your specific organization.
I'll jump in real quick. I did get to do this at the marathon this past year. It was like my favorite, best day ever. I got to be part of the sweep operation. But if I can't be there, I always make sure I have a course cyclist. It's dedicated to my volunteers, and he's got a list of all of the volunteer leaders, their schedule, and he's there to assure that they're all doing okay and can kind of jump in and put out any fires, but just to check in on them, because sometimes we can't. But one of my race day roles last year for a marathon was being on the sweep, and I was in the van going, "Thank you, volunteers!" like screaming the whole 26 miles. It was the most amazing thing. I also got to check in to make sure they were cleaning up on the course too.
Oh, I'm so jealous of you, Donna.
Kristen, if you have any of those videos you can share, we would love to put that in the recap of this so we can show people some examples. That would be really cool.
For sure.
We got two questions about volunteer local, and Melissa, I appreciate you answering the first one in the chat. The second one is this is from Pete. I'm curious about sending letters to confirm volunteer hours. How do larger races do this, particularly using volunteer local? Do you make individual letters and send them out, or is there a way that you quickly produce and send these?
Do you want me to jump in on that since I use volunteer local?
That'd be great.
Yeah, so whenever we do the letters, number one, although I would love to give one to everyone, I don't. So I do say after the event, reach out and I'll be happy to confirm your hours. So that helps take the pool of, like, for marathon in particular, 4,000 volunteers. That pretty much skinnies it down to about a couple hundred people that are going to reach out and ask. Now, volunteer local does have a means now where you can kind of confirm those hours through their database and send something. We still prefer to make our own letter. So I typically, I have something, if I'm going to be candid, I have it in Canva. I have it set up so I can just go back in and kind of populate that with their name, the number of hours they worked, and what their actual shift was. So I do pull that out of volunteer local to make it personal. And then I have my CEO's signature on there. And then I just more or less save it as a PDF and email it to them. That allows it to look a little more tailored rather than just like a general. Sometimes, I don't mind using what they have in volunteer local, but it lacks our branding and our just a flair that makes it look a little more like one-on-one.
I was going to say, Melissa, I also use volunteer local, and I do the same steps because I like the look of being able to put our header, our footer, get the signature feeling in there, because sometimes it is, they do need a specific cadence of what's needed. And so I just pull from volunteer local 95% of the time.
We've only got about 2 minutes left. And Donna, the last question specifically to you, it looks like you're typing it, but I think a lot of people want to know, how do you get a See a Volunteer, Thank a Volunteer shirt?
Lucky for you, we actually do have some extras, so I'll pop it in my email in the chat. Please do email me if you want one. I'm happy to mail that to you because I want that.
Boy, I hope you have a lot of extras.
We do. Don't tell our partnership team that though. They will tell me off for having extras.
One last question I want to take time for, because this is a good one. And I remember from working at the track club, this was always one that we had a hard time getting. How do you get hard spots covered like course marshals?
Look, honestly, I'm a part of there's a round table that we kind of have of volunteer managers. And this is something that I asked last year because it is a hard spot. A lot of people, it's early. I don't know if y'all got some troubled areas of your city, but we do in Atlanta. And one thing that we started to do is have them partner together if it's possible, if you have that amount of volunteers, to be able to have people partner together. Because they'll enjoy more with a friend, whether they know them or if they don't. We'll have a kind of buddy-to-buddy program if it's available to you.
Awesome. Well, I know it's almost top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for their time today. Our panel, you were fantastic. This was more information than we could possibly all comprehend. So the video will come back and watch it. We'll put it in the email in the next couple of days. 2 upcoming things we just want to share with everybody. We are doing roundtables the week of May 5th. So we did roundtables at our running industry conference this year. They were hugely successful, lots of great information sharing. We're going to bring those back virtually the week of May 5th. So we have large events, small events, marketing, HR recruitment. There's a bunch of them. So check the newsletter that comes out Saturday for the details on that. And the Global Runner Survey is out right now. It is, we're well on our way to 10,000 responses. If you have it, especially if you're a volunteer manager, share it with your volunteer database. Often our volunteers are runners too, and we want to know what kind of trends they're seeing in their race participation. So if you can share that, we would love it, and we'll share the results with you in the fall. Again, we'll be putting this out this week as a video. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to our panel for all the awesome information, and have a great rest of your week.